Jai Gurudev. Today we are reading My Life, Its Legacy and Message by Pandit Shriram Sharma Acharya. Chapter 6 Sowing of the Seeds for Sublimation of Attitudes and Thoughts, another invitation for pilgrimage to the Himalayas. The movement for sublimation of attitudes and thoughts of the masses, known as Vikar Kranti Abhiyan, was born at Madhura. My determination to sublime the attitudes and thoughts of crores of people is being materialized through this movement. The Sahasra Kundi Yagya, performed in 1958, was simply a medium for the meeting of parijans who were connected with me since previous births and who had to play an important role in the fulfillment of the mission of my present life. About 1 lakh persons took a pledge in this yagya to root out the vices from their families, their personal lives, and from the society. This was a Narmed yagya. In this yagya, I invited and called upon public-spirited, other-centered persons to join the movement as my colleagues and dedicate themselves to selfless service of society. In fact, I was a mere channel for the flow of divine energy of the invisible miracle worker, my Gurudev, for building up the structure of a mighty movement, for bringing about a total transformation in the hearts and minds of the masses. It was in Madhura that a comprehensive scheme was chalked out to spread the light in every village, by organizing Gayatri Yagya and Yug Nirman Sammelans for moral, intellectual, and social upliftment. All dynamic and inspired persons who had participated in the Sahasra Kundi Yagya at Madhura took up the responsibility to set up the branches of the mission at their respective places and perform similar yagyas there. In other words, in that spiritually surcharged atmosphere of Mahayagya, each of these vibrantly alive persons was inspired to take upon himself the responsibility of finding out at least 1,000 thoughtful persons from the surrounding area and enlist them as active workers of the mission. All these celebrations were planned for 4 days each. Music and discourses were to be organized for 3 days, in which detailed outline and working methods for implementing the 3 transformations were explained, and on the 4th day, people were asked to take a pledge in the presence of sacrificial fire of yagya to give up vices and adopt righteous way of life. These celebrations were most successful. About 1 crore of people listened to the ideology of the mission, and millions took a pledge to give up vices, blind faith, and evil customs. In most of these functions, marriages without dowry and pomp and show were also solemnized. Later in Madhura, a yagya of 100 kunds was performed in which ideal marriages of 100 couples were celebrated. Since then, such celebrations have become a regular feature of the mission's activities, and every year many persons are being benefited by this movement. It is not in public interest to disclose details of several mysterious events which are linked with the important occasion of Sahasra Kundi Yagya. Gurudev has forbidden their disclosure during my present lifespan. There were great tangible benefits from this yagya. A huge organization of Gayatri Parivar was formed within no time. An infrastructure of a moral reawakening movement was built up for basic transformation of thoughts and attitudes of the society through mass moral education. Later, after 2 decades, Pragya Sansthans and Swadhyaya mandals were formed at places where branches had been established after the Mahayagya. A dedicated whole-time group of workers also emerged from this yagya, who later took full and independent charge of the press, publication, and publicity at Madhura, after I had shifted to Shantikunj, Haridwar for good. Thus, this Mahayagya and subsequent celebration throughout the country had played an important role as a background for the selection of volunteers and permanent workers at Shantikunj. My own organizing capacity was further owned and developed. Several camps of 1 week, 9 days, and 1 month were organized in the limited campus of Gayatri Tapobhumi in Madhura. After Sahasra Kundi Yagya and Sat Kundi Yagya, Panchkosh Ki Sadhana, Kayak Kalpa, and Jivan Sadhana camps were organized at Madhura for integrated spiritual upliftment, holistic health, and a lifelong pursuit of self-awakening, respectively, according to the instructions of Gurudev. The love of parijans who visited Gayatri Tapobhumi and feelings of mutual intimate relationship with them gave birth to the huge organization known as Gayatri Parivar. Each member of this Gayatri Parivar turns to me as a father figure, counselor, guide, and healer in his or her personal and domestic problems. In response to their affectionate invitations, I visited several places from where people had come to Madhura for the Mahayagya. I attended several yagya celebrations, seminars, and conferences in which several awakened intellectuals participated. When I decided to leave Madura and shift to Haridwar, I toured almost the entire country for about 2 years. At Tatat Nagar, Mahasunmand, Bahraik, Bhilwara, and Porbandar, huge Sahasrakundi yagyas were performed on the same scale at which the Mahayagya at Madura was performed. I used to visit 3 places in a day and toured thousands of miles before I left for Agyatvas, or seclusion. As a result of these extensive tours, I could lay my hands on several dedicated workers. Innumerable persons who had lived like rishis in their past births came in my contact. I judged their capacity, enrolled them in the parivar, and thus a huge organization was set up. Gurudev had directed long back that I would have to go to the Himalayas again and stay there for 6 months. I was asked to break my emotional ties with Madura, shift to Sapta Sarovar, Haridwar, and initiate establishment of Rishi traditions at this place, which was once a tapastali. I had gradually started entrusting my routine responsibilities to my wife. She had been my life partner in 2 of the 3 previous births. During this life also, she has played the role of an inseparable soulmate and companion. In fact, her dedication, devotion, and disposition for service has served as the bedrock for all of my achievements. She gladly molded herself according to my wishes and stood firm in all adverse circumstances. My family background was of a rural landlord, while she hailed from an urban family. But when the question of merging with each other arose, we effortlessly united and became one. I donated my village land for building a school there, and the money received from zamindari bonds was used for purchasing land for Gayatri Tapobhumi. She donated all her ornaments for constructing the building of Gayatri Tapobhumi. Her self-surrender and sacrifice helped me in achieving exemplary heights in the realms of spiritual growth and service for the society. During my earlier pilgrimage to the Himalayas in the years 1959 to 60, when I stayed there for about 1.5 years, my wife had taken upon herself the responsibility of publication and organizing the mission in my absence. Then, after 10 years, I again went to the Himalayas in 1971, leaving behind a large, far-flung spiritual family. Gayatri Parivar needed a patron in visible form who could give them love, guidance, and affection. Mother alone can console a child in moments of pain and distress. Mataji, my wife, undertook and idly discharged about this responsibility. Even 3 years before proceeding on the pilgrimage, I remained on long tours, and at that time, Mataji used to look after and give solace to Parijans who visited Madura. I received her constant cooperation and living in a life totally dedicated to the well-being and service of society. With a paltry amount of rupees, 200, she used to maintain a family of 5 persons and extend hospitality to the visitors. Never was anybody sent back disappointed. The life in which we lived at Madura was like a precious trust on which not only the foundations of the life-transforming mission was laid, but persons having strong shoulders were also found who could carry the responsibility of my gradual withdrawal from the visible scene on a day-to-day organizational work. Some mysterious events at Madura. The activities which I was directed to undertake at Madura appeared to be difficult in the beginning. According to my knowledge and competence, in the absence of material and human resources, experience and wisdom, then how could such a stupendous work be done? When Gurudev saw that I was losing courage, he took the reins in his hand. Only my body was utilized. The work was done by the puppeteer himself, to whose tune I simply danced as a puppet. The only credit that I can claim was that I gladly danced to his tune. I devoted 4 hours daily for writing work. It appeared as if the example of Vyas and Ganesh was being repeated. When Puranas was written, Vyas dictated to Ganesh. The same thing happened with me. The translation of voluminous ancient Sanskrit scriptural texts was a difficult task. Like Ganesh, I was used as a mere scribe for translating the 4 Vedas, 108 Upanishads, 6 Darshans, 24 Smritis, but the entity who gave dictation was some invisible power. Otherwise, so huge a task could not have been completed within so short a time. Hundreds of books relating to mass education through the agency of moral and spiritual instruction could not have been written on the strength of talents of one single person. This writing work continues uninterrupted since the day it was started. The weight of my published works almost equals the weight of my body. For publication, a press was needed. With my own limited resources, I had somehow managed for a hand press. The one who had to get all this work done through me landed at my childishness. Miraculously, there was steady development of the press, and treadles, cylinder, automatic, and offset machines were added one after the other. Their cost and those of the publication added up to lakhs of rupees. On my own human strength, the number of subscribers of Akhand Jyoti could reach 2,000 only. The guide then gave a push, and the figure has now gone up to 1.5 lakhs. It is likely to register a tenfold increase in due course time. In all, about 1.5 lakh copies of Yug Nirman Yojana in Hindi and Yug Sakti Gayatri, Gujarati, and Yug Satri, Oriya, are also being published. It is an unprecedented record that magazines wholly written by one person have such a large circulation, without incurring any loss, and that, too, without accepting any advertisement. With a view to organizing Gayatri Parivar, Sahasra Kundi Yagya was performed at Madura by way of Purna Ahuti of Mahapurusha Charanas. There is no exaggeration in saying that there has not been any celebration of this scale since Mahabharata times. Hardly does anybody know about some mysterious occurrences relating to this celebration. Devoted Gayatri Sadhaks, about 4 lakh in numbers, were invited from all over the country. They all took over charge of the work of educating the masses through moral and spiritual instruction. All these persons were unknown to me, but invitation letters reached them, and they came at their own cost. It remains a riddle and a mystery. The number of daily visitors and participants in the yagya was about 10 lakh persons. The latter were all lodged in a number of huge camps covering an area of 7 miles. No participant in the yagya was sent back without food. We had provisions sufficient only for feeding about 20,000 people at one time, but the store became inexhaustible. More than 5 lakh persons were fed in this function, which lasted for 5 days. Provisions were left over after the celebration, which were distributed free of cost to deserving persons. Arrangements were so meticulous that they could not have been made even by engaging 1,000 paid employees. All these are mysterious matters. I have described only the factual aspect of this celebration, but the underlying mystery is confined to me. Nobody could imagine how all these arrangements were made and who was behind these accomplishments. It was all the play of an invisible power. Rishis, whom I had met during my first visit to the Himalayas, were also present in the yagya in their astral bodies. People said that it was a miracle wrought by me, but the fact is that I was looking at the entire game as a mere spectator, like Jad Bharat. The third work which I had to do at Madura was construction of Gayatri Tapobhumi. A small building could not have served the needs of such a stupendous program. Its construction work is still going on even after my leaving Madura. It has now been extended and developed in the form of Pragyanagar. Those who have visited Madura are amazed to see the campus of Gayatri Tapobhumi, its press, its arrangements for the stay of visitors, and the dedication of the workers. The credit for such a grand campus and its management cannot be given to an individual, but to the invisible power which is using me as an instrument. Arjun's chariot was driven by Sri Krishna as his charioteer. It may be said that Arjuna and the Pandavas fought the Mahabharata war and achieved victory by their own valor, courage, and strength, but it was not true. They were the same Pandavas in whose presence Draupadi was undraped, and they could do nothing. During the period of exile, they remained under disguise and worked as mere servants. My competence is quite insignificant. If anybody wants to take account of my achievements at Madura, he will have to bear in mind the facts about my life sadhana. I should not be regarded anything beyond a puppet who surrenders and dances to the tune of its master. This feeling of dedication and surrender is the central theme of the story of my life. I have taught this to all those who come in my contact. I have simply revealed the importance of upasana, sadhana, and aradhana, and as for myself, I have only been an instrument of the invisible power. End of chapter 6. Jai Gurudev.